basically what we are doing is an ICT-mediated participatory governance. Usually in the past, the budget of the community, which is the key element, was done in total opacity. You could go to any city, ask for a budget, nobody knew where the budget was. Consequences were that all these areas were like dwindling into misery, into poverty, and population were total. There was a huge distrust between population and the people who were ruling them.
In the case of participatory budgeting in South Kivu, we started from scratch with a participatory budgeting process, and then ICTs were introduced to try and boost participation and diversify participation.
This project now is bringing openness, participation. Now you have a head of a community who calls his population for task, for telling him, this is what I'm planning to do for the next year, and I want to hear from you.
D'abord, c'est la transparence, puisqu'il y a longtemps que notre gouvernement a travaillé lui seul, sans pour autant associer la population.
Participatory budgeting per se is a proven and tested model where we see beneficial impact that comes out of that process, both for citizens and governments. But the entire process draws its legitimacy of broad and inclusive participation. So if we can use ICT, we can help drive up the numbers of participation.
In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where people have no access to water or electricity or a lot of basic services, people have mobile phones. Over 55% of the national territory is covered by mobile networks. And we're increasingly seeing that people share mobile phones. So mobile phones are starting to become an important tool for citizens to communicate with their government. Local government authorizes either by decree or by law that they're going to devote a certain percentage of the investment budget to whatever citizens decide. This is transformational because this is putting power on the citizens to decide what their government should invest their money on.
ICT in this case, we are using SMSs first as a way of communicating, telling people this is what is happening, there is going to be a meeting, please come at this place at this moment. We are using ICT to help into the votes. We are using SMSs for sending back the information to the population after the votes, telling the population there have been a vote, this is what has been decided, and if you want more information, you can go to your local authority to get more information. We needed a tool which is relevant to our realities. And what is our realities? These are African realities. People are in remote places, people don't really have electricity for watching TV or listening to the radio.
When I was participating in the town hall meeting in Luinja, it was really fascinating to see how citizens that until very recently never know what is in a budget, that until recently have never been consulted on these type of decision making and prioritizing of how to best spend public money, how they became engaged in this process, how they discussed projects and then voted on very concrete proposals to make their life better. Issues that were important in their daily life. So if we, for example, take one borough of Luinja, citizens voted in the majority to build a bridge between two communities. And it was quite fascinating to witness this process where citizens for the first time became engaged in this process.
On a vu des canalisations ouvertes dans les chefferies. On a eu des maisons de groupement. Les maisons de groupement ont été construites. On a vu des véhicules achetés pour le déplacement des autorités. Donc les autorités d'administration décentralisées grâce à ces rétrocessions. Même, il y a certains étudiants qui ont eu le subside, qui ont eu des frais pour études grâce à la rétrocession.
No, what has been nice actually from House Kivu and what we've been hearing from our people on the ground is that women are playing more of a leadership role, which is really nice, and that how they would stand up in meetings to vote on things, and it seems like it was surprising to a few people.
C'était bloqué au niveau de la province, mais actuellement nous sentons et nous avons des rétrocessions au niveau national. Quand ils envoient au niveau provincial, nous avons aussi, parce que c'est automatiquement dans le compte.
This was the start for them to start engaging in a process where they most certainly will be interested to see what comes out of it. And that interest is now an opportunity, if we look at governance, to engage with them, ask them to help government monitor the implementation of these projects. That helps us not only increase numbers, but also include certain demographics of the population that were previously excluded. So we do need to look at who remains excluded from the supporting ICT tools that we can use, and then come up with complementary traditional ways to try to reach as many people as possible to become part of this process.
Ma vision par rapport au budget participatif est d'intégrer tout le monde dans la participation de la chefferie. Je souhaiterais que tout le monde puisse savoir ce qui s'est fait, ce qui est capable d'être fait, et par les efforts de tout le monde.
So participatory budgeting started in Porto Alegre in 1989. Was an initiative of the city to give citizens a voice on how the budget is allocated. You know? It was ambitious because normally budget is considered as an extremely complex thing. So participatory budgeting started with very few people. Very few people attended these meetings. But what you could see afterwards is that people could see the benefits, so more people were coming. And not only the number of people increased, but what I see nowadays is that the number of cities doing it increased. You know, nowadays it's estimated that up to 1,500 cities do participatory budgeting around the world. Participatory budgeting is a democratic innovation that comes from the South. It is, and as such, it has been replicated in many cities. In the Dominican Republic, participatory budgeting is mandated in the country's constitution. We already coming into these already existing participatory budgeting processes and using technology to foster citizen participation.
El desarrollo de un municipio depende de poder cumplir, de poder satisfacer las necesidades de su comunidad. Debemos trabajar de manera conjunta y es que ellos aprendan a valorar estas obras que se están haciendo para su propio beneficio. De otra parte, también es importante en la medida en que logremos mayor integración de las comunidades. En este proceso no solamente vamos a necesitar de un ayuntamiento dispuesto, de una comunidad interesada en salir adelante, sino de herramientas que nos permitan hacer mejor este proceso.
So in the Dominican Republic, we had an excellent opportunity. There was already a call center that received 5 million calls per year, which is an incredible number if you think that the country has a population of 10 million citizens.
We're taking a call center operation that is run by the government to ask citizens what they think about the status of public services in their communities. So when citizens call to ask for information, whether it's on how to get a driver's license or how to any sort of information that they want from the government, we ask citizens, tell us about the status of water, of electricity in your community. Has your trash been picked up? Are there potholes outside your street? And when they report that, the local governments are responding to the citizen via SMS. So if the government can fix it, they will send a text message to the citizen saying, your trash will be picked up at this date. We thank you for participating and having this dialogue. If they cannot fix it, they'll invite the citizen to participate in participatory budgeting processes in which in community assemblies, they can express that this is a priority for their community and have their fellow citizens vote on whether that is the most important priority so that the government actually devotes resources to that priority.
And this is what we mean when we talk about cross-voice. we are using existing channels of citizen-state interaction. So why not use that interaction to get structured data to inform reform processes?
Desafortunadamente ocurrió un hecho lamentable, una tragedia en la comunidad a causa del desbordamiento de un río. Y gracias a que ellos tenían unos dineros a favor que les había como sobrado del ayuntamiento, del presupuesto participativo, el ayuntamiento pudo entonces ayudarles inmediatamente con diferentes necesidades que la comunidad tenía. Eso nos exige a nosotros como ayuntamiento también ser más eficientes en nuestro trabajo. Saber que si alguien se toma la molestia de indicarnos por este medio, por una llamada o un mini mensaje, que algo está ocurriendo en su comunidad, también nos obliga a nosotros a responderle lo más rápido posible.
When we are being asked what's in it for the government, those governments that have made this mechanism work for them, they tell us that they see real value in this feedback data. For them, that data has a value in designing and refining reform efforts.
Las personas ahora están más interesadas en saber qué significa presupuesto participativo. Más personas puedan integrarse a las asambleas comunitarias, más personas sean conscientes del valor del presupuesto participativo para sí mismos y también para todo el municipio. Sepan la importancia de ir a las asambleas, de opinar, de definir sus prioridades. Hoy nuestras comunidades están cambiando su manera de pensar. Participar es integrarse a los procesos que están buscando su propio desarrollo. Entonces es muy lindo que ahora encontramos muchos municipios que saben que su participación es necesaria para el desarrollo de sus comunidades, para poder cambiar aquello que puede estar mal en su comunidad, para construir algo que necesita su comunidad.
Let's not say that participation is an easy process to do. Participation takes lots of time, lots of resources, and above all, lots of commitment. So one of the challenges is how to make governments responsive, because one thing is to give voice to citizens, another thing is to make sure that the governments can listen to them and react to that in an appropriate manner. You also need to have a back office, let's say, to respond. It takes time to process people's demands. You also need to manage expectations incredibly. It is extremely difficult afterwards to keep a momentum of engagement. No? So in the same way that participation should be more than having elections every few years, also citizen participation should be a bit more than having a participatory assembly every year. So we try to sustain that momentum. You can help this process by participating yourself, by telling other people to participate, or by telling your government that you want to participate. Making sure voices are heard and making sure that these voices, someone can respond to these voices. And of course, whenever you can, use technology, but technology that corresponds to the people's reality.
Do we really get the perfect and inclusive process through ICT, where we reach everybody that has previously been excluded? Most likely not. So each channel of participation has a cost, has benefits and has limitations. And so ICT has its own set of benefits and limitations. But what is the right mix of channels of participation where we try to maximize the benefits and minimize the cost?
And you cannot come with the tool first. That cannot be the first thing. What is more important is a process of engagement around it. And I would say we probably spend 80% of our time on the engagement process and maybe 20% on the actual devising the tool, which doesn't necessarily take too long, especially if you're trying to keep it simple.
Always think of context. Technological innovation will be always context specific, no? And normally try to use whatever people are using already and keep it simple.
And of course, Latin America has been a pioneer in this field and continues to be. For example, in Brazil, we're trying to take participatory budgeting at the national level using ICTs.
If we look at Brazil today, what is really nice to see is how all actors involved, government and civil society, are eager to strengthen what they have built over the years. And they have not only produced lessons, but they are willing now to learn what comes back to them as new lessons emerging, for example, on the usage of ICT.
Actually, it's an interesting story because participatory budgeting starts in Porto Alegre. It spreads around the world. People start using technology. It is important to notice that participatory budgeting is not only an innovation, but it also has been a source of innovation. This source of innovation has gone to other places, to Korea, to Dominican Republic, to Europe, in Africa. This innovation now comes back again to its origins, coming back to Rio Grande do Sul state.
So the newly emerging model of cross-selling citizen participation through cross-voice that the World Bank Institute facilitated jointly with the President's Office of the Dominican Republic is now being replicated in Brazil, and all actors embracing the approach. And so we see in Brazil a process unfolding where significant resources are provided by the government to strengthen that process.
People say that democracy is the power of the people, but actually if you look at the etymology and the context that it was used, I think the best word to define democracy is the capacity to do things. So if you want to be able to do more, we need more democracy, and that's when participatory budgeting and participatory democracy comes in.